23 years old, I'm living in a little apartment in Lake Charles, Louisiana, little tiny duplex. I lived on one half of this thing. And me and my dog, Capo. I don't know what I was doing trying to take care of a dog. I couldn't even take care of myself. One rainy night, this dude, Danny, comes in with drugs. Another day where I said, I'm gonna quit today. Now it's 11 o'clock at night. I didn't quit. 10 times I failed again. Danny leaves the house, and when Danny leaves the house, I didn't know, but he set it up to rob me and beat me up. Danny leaves the house, and I let him out the front door, and this other big dude in the rain, a rainy Louisiana night, puts a .45 caliber pistol in my face, right here, okay? I had a plate in my hand. I had something to eat, and I had a plate when I walked Danny to the door, and this guy had to be this big, hovered over me with a gun in my face, and when he did, my reaction was to hit him with the plate in the face. You know, I broke this plate. It was an unbreakable plate, one of those plates you can't break. And I broke it in his face, like just cracked it in his face. Thing breaks and he becomes like a monster. This scar right here in my head is, he took that .45 caliber and jammed it in my face. Like, I don't mean jammed it, I mean cracked me right here in the forehead. My life changes now. I'm getting ready to get cracked so many times here. I'm getting ready to get the lesson of my life of where I'm really living. I already knew it, but this was the exclamation mark on where my life had gone from being a good kid to this far from dying. He hits me here. He cracks me over both my eyes here, underneath these two eyes. What's the word? Incapacitates both my arms. Incapacitates both my arms because he takes and chops them both behind the elbows so you can't use your arms. Like literally, I'm walking around, I can't move my arms. Blood's coming down. Every wall in this apartment, in this room, and the ceiling has blood on it. They ransacked the house, robbed me of a little bit of money, and literally leave me on the floor for a dead man. My dog's in the back. My dog's locked up in the back, the Doberman. They set it up to do this. This is what happens when you hang around bad people. Sooner or later, the day's gonna come where you're gonna pay the price. I get rushed to the hospital. My girlfriend's there. She's in the back. She comes out, gets me to the hospital. I spend 3 days in a hospital. Actually, I go to the hospital. They put in 70 stitches in my head and face. Like my whole face is just carved up. The sheriff's department comes because they know something bad's happening. And I'm like, I'm fine, I can go home. They stitch me up. I go home to my mother. I walk into my mother's house in the little brick house that I resented so much. And I walk to the house, and I go to the house in the back door. I knock on the back door. I'm beat up now, okay? Face is swollen. My mom comes to the door, and she's like, what? What? Where's my son at? Where's my son at? I'm like, Mom, I am your son. Where is my son? Nobody could recognize who I was. That's how beat up I was. I go in the house. I try to lay down. She puts me in this, you know, on a couch, and I try to lay down there. And the hospital doesn't want me to go to sleep because I could literally die. So they bring me back to the hospital. I spend 3 days in the hospital, and I'm like, I'm done. No more drugs. Okay, literally, I can't even recognize myself anymore. No more drugs. I'm done using drugs. Okay, guess what happens? I'm using drugs 15 minutes later, 10 times a day in the hospital. See, you would think, looking back, I would think this would be the day I would quit. For 2 more years, I would use drugs every day. Couldn't get out, couldn't quit, okay? Look, nobody starts using drugs and thinks they're gonna be a drug addict. I didn't. I started using drugs, and for some reason, something happened where those drugs just took over. My mom, at the age of 25, my mom says to me, you're no longer welcome in my home. You're no longer welcome in my business. I don't want to see you anymore. And that was the day my life turned around. So 24 hours later, I was in a treatment center. because my mom had the courage to say, enough is enough, I'm done. Really, everybody was pretty much done with me at this point. You know, my older brother died when I was 20. So 3 years, well, I guess, yeah, 5 years before this, my older brother dies. He was worried about me. All I know at this point, I lost my dad when I was 10, I lost my brother when I was 20, I lost, you know, I gave up my career and maybe I'm gonna be a baseball player to drugs. I've lost 5 or 6 jobs now, and I'm a loser, dude. I'm a total loser. But I do have this little light inside of me that says I'm special. I have this little thing inside of me that says, hey, you are special, you know? You have something. But it was just covered up in all this stuff and all these problems and in the drugs and the bad friends and the bad choices. So my mom finally says, enough is enough. Don't come back here anymore. I'm done. I could tell it was hard for her. I'm in a treatment center in the next 24 hours. I go to this treatment center. I'm there 30 days. For the first 30 days in 7, 8, 9 years, I don't use drugs. Oh, wow. I don't have to use drugs. Finally, that thing where I said I was quitting 10 times a day, for the first time in my life, I was able to quit successfully. I'm leaving the treatment center when the insurance ran out, because that's how those work. When the money runs out, they boot you to the curb. I'm terrified, scared to go back to society. I don't have any friends that aren't using drugs. My girlfriend was using drugs. Everybody around me, everybody I knew used drugs. And I'm going back to a job where even at the job I had, they used drugs. And I'm like, I'm going back to an environment. I have to cut off all my friends, not really friends. I got to cut off all the enemies, right? And I got to start over. And before I leave, the counselor grabs me and the counselor says to me, look, dude, I'll see you back here. Probably, you know, if you don't die, I'll see you back here. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? I'm not coming back here. And he's like, oh no, you're coming back. And then he gives me the lecture. He's like, you'll never make it. See, when you go to a treatment center, you tell them everything about your life, like all your secrets, all your inhibitions, and your, you know, the things you want to do in your life, right? And so I'm telling them in this thing, everything I've done wrong. I share my whole life, but I also share with them what I want to do, my inspiration in life. I'm going to write books. I'm going to speak to audiences. I'm going to help people. I'm going to tell people this story about drugs and how damaging they are. And I'm going to be somebody, I tell them. And they're like, no, dude. You're a drug addict. And all you're ever going to be, this is what the counselor tells me, all you're ever going to be is a drug addict. You need to give up all the ideas of writing books, speaking to audiences, being rich. I always wanted to be rich. I wanted financially to be rich my whole life. I wanted to be my dad. I wanted to be the guy that could take care of his family. They said, you need to give up all those ideas and settle for one thing, not using drugs. If the day ends and you don't use drugs, Grant, that is a good day for you.